Thoughtless casual gaming. Thoughtless casual gaming. Thoughtless casual gaming. Thoughtless casual gaming.
Hello and welcome. You are listening to Thoughtless Casual Gaming with Brett and Jace. We are a Geelong-based gaming podcast where we play some games, usually badly, and then usually talk about how bad we are at them.
Or in this case, we just watch the games on YouTube and then talk about how shit we are at them.
It's a little from column A and nothing from column B. But what we're here to talk about today is we are here to talk about Conquest, the last argument of kings, which is the longest name for a game I think I've heard.
Yes, however, I look, and I had so many things to rip on it about because, you know, the final disagreement of reigning monarchs is just, you know, how much further can you take this? I do, however, think it's potentially the most progressive metal album name of a game I've ever heard. Like, you could see that on a record.
Yeah. I was kind of disappointed that, like, it didn't stand for, not stand for something, but the initials didn't make out some cool word. Like, it's Katlak. It should be like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of more like clearing your throat than
Yeah.
I just choked on a hairball.
A few more words, and you could have had like some long name that shortens to clitoris or something. I don't know.
No, then we'd never be able to find the game.
No, that's true. But I mean, the name aside, we obviously have a competition going at the moment where we are giving away the starter box, kindly donated by Throw the Dice here in Geelong, which is a wonderful prize. It's a huge box. You've got the box. Tell me about it.
It is large. And it's like, actually, you know, I had a look through, you know, the kind of, what do they call it when you list all the things that are in a thing?
Contents.
Yeah, that one. It's been a week. So not only like having it's a weighty box, but there's that, and then just flicking through like a couple of unboxings and reviews and stuff, and you get a lot of stuff. So it's a 2-player starter box as a starting point. You get kind of 2 starter forces, one for effectively the human faction, the 100 Kingdoms. I'm not sure if there is exactly 100 Kingdoms. What happens if A, somebody, you know, takes over one, or B, one sort of does a revolt situation? Because 99 Kingdoms doesn't it? Nah, I've got 99 Kingdoms. And anyway, and also Spire. So the 2 of the starting factions, but they're pre-done warbands. You can basically roll out of that box and start playing. You know, it's not a full massive scale game, but like they're chucking in knights. It's not just, you know, single pose plastic, you know, like we're all used to with old ones. There's the full Spire Abomination critter is in that, which is this huge monster piece as well. So that all your tokens, like everything you need to basically roll out the game for you and a mate, which is a pretty sweet box for, you know, a starter box for literally, you know, first investment. You split that with a mate, and you are already testicle deep in Conquest.
The models themselves too are really impressive looking models. Like there's a number of different factions, and all the models there's something different. They're bigger than your standard size, aren't they?
Yeah, they've gone a fraction. I think they're sort of more a 40 mil, sort of on a similar scale to, let's say, Marvel, where everything's a little bit chunkier, a little bit bigger, which is kind of nice for a painting side of things. But I really like that they've kind of taken their own spin on all of the traditional factions. So they've got, I think they've now got the 6 factions going, but there's just something a little bit different about every single one of them, and it does mean that you may not have gravitated to, as an example, an undead faction in historically in Warhammer or any of those other games, that have got those kind of very traditional, necromancer, zombie, vampire type undead factions. But this one's just got a slightly different little bent to it. It's a little bit more, I almost want to say sort of Roman legionary with their undead guys. It's just a different feel. The same with the dwarves. The Spire are unlike many things I have seen. If anything, that is a whole other world of, that they've gone rogue with the artistic creativity on that one.
That's the one that intrigues me the most, I think. They look pretty cool.
Yeah. So no, I really, really dig A, the scale, B, and I think like every game, the starter box has some of the kind of basic infantry and stuff, and they've bumped it up a step more by doing the big monsters and stuff. But they're also a company that, by all accounts, from everything I'm hearing, is going leaps and bounds on the production quality of the models as well. So less cleanup, all that jazz, which is glorious.
Yeah. Look, there's the models are impressive. One thing I noticed, you say that they've sort of done their own take too. There's no elves.
There is no elves
in a fantasy game. That's like almost unheard of, isn't it?
No, and what was interesting is I was listening to another podcast on this exact topic, and they kind of suggested that the Spire are the elves of.
Okay.
And like digging into this a little bit more, this is probably the other thing I really appreciate is how much they've started creating a new world. And a whole, it's not just here's a game, roll some dice, enjoy it. Here's some models, they're pretty, go paint them. But they're actually investing in that storytelling component and that narrative component. And so the whole concept is the Spire were kind of, your space alien type dudes. They've had some, a bit of an explore down this way with some scientists and some whatnot. Some shit's gone down. And a whole bunch of them have basically just had to flee, as sort of shit's happening in the ether. So they've basically come in, they've closed all the portals behind them, they've destroyed everything, they're never getting back. They've doomed the rest of their race to death, effectively, by doing this.
Okay.
And then they've realised they're a little bit fucked. Because they haven't got all of the stuff, the super advanced civilization stuff. So the whole concept is they went, we're going to have to do something about this. And they let their scientists go a little bit rogue and started cloning.
Okay.
And that's basically where all the troops come from. They're these vat-grown kind of troops. So it's kind of born out of this whole racial desperation for survival that they're like, how are we going to guarantee our continued existence? Right, we just have to get the scientists to go gangbusters, forget any of the rules, forget the ethics, forget the religion, forget the everything, just make it happen. And they kind of did, but they kind of got it wrong, and now they've got these kind of drones or the vat-grown dudes that they just roll out, and that's kind of where this whole elvish thing, it's this super high ancient race, super high technology dying out. And it's just how the situation and how they've dealt with that kind of desperate, survival.
Okay, so 6 playable armies.
Yes.
That's the kind of background they've got for one of them. Like how much effort is that? And
not only that, that's the overall Spire background. Every single one of their different factions have got sub-factions within them. So with the Spire, no, actually, that's one I'm going to struggle with. But if with the humans, for example, is an easy one, because I can actually remember it, but you've effectively got the aristocracy, like the nobles and stuff. You've got the knightly houses, and you've got the religious sort of leadership as three different sub factions within that, and there's this kind of war between them for control as well. So they've gone already super deep on just the history, the how everyone's got there, and they're writing it as they go. So they're engaging with the community, which I thought was super cool, to sort of go, right, well, you can vote on their website. I think anyone can do it, for your favorite faction unit or whatever, and that's the story that they continue based on who everyone votes for.
So a number of companies have done or tried to do something similar like that in the past. I know GW did it with like the Black Crusade way back when. Your games mattered to the overall storyline, but the overall storyline didn't change that much. Like straight away from the get-go, these guys are basically taking on board what people like, what people are intrigued by, and running with that from the sounds of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I suppose Games Workshop's probably a little bit, and it has almost been a good thing for them, but they were so established in the story when everybody came along already. You kind of already had all this history. But, if I look at Warhammer or 40K as an example, if we look at 40K, for example, there's all this history, right? But they've basically stagnated for the last, 20-something years? History hasn't progressed at all. The Emperor's still on his throne. Everybody was kind of panicking for the survival of mankind. Stuff was happening, but nothing meaty happened. For that entire time, we had this really kind of meaty history, and we had this kind of threat of stuff to come. But we all played the game in this kind of little vacuum time capsule thing, and it seems like, they're going, look, we have to start somewhere. So there is a history and there is this, but the world is living, it is growing, stuff is happening. And I kind of like that they're not basing it on, as far as I know anyway, they're not basing it on games. It's not the, play in the global campaign for it. It's just, what stuff is cool? What stuff do you like? Let's just...
Taking the rule of cool to another level.
Yeah. And just going with it.
I mean, it's... There's something really to be said about a level of backstory and background details that a game does. Like GW, taking them, for example, I mean, I totally agree with what you said. Like, we've been in the same sort of world for the last 20 years. And in actual fact, the only movement that I've seen recently is going backwards and focusing more on 30K than 40K, for example. But GW did it so well with having that story and getting people excited about the world that they were playing in. Like, obviously, that's a big thing, and it's something that these guys have taken on board. What else is there about the game that intrigues you?
Look, there's a few things. I really dig the difference that the different route they've taken with all of the different factions, and the most obvious ones for me were the dwarves. And the dwarves, we look at the Tolkiens, we look at the Games Workshop, we look at all those kind of things that they don't like magic, and they like making stuff, and they're grumpy old fucks. With this one, the dwarves were created by dragons, effectively as a slave race, to make them stuff. So there's still that kind of craft, artisanally kind of thing. But effectively what's happened is there's been a couple of revolts from within. The dwarves found some ancient shit that made them very strong and gave them sort of elemental magic. So there's this fire kind of clan, and there's a earthbending clan, for want of a better term. And they've gone and eradicated the dragons, and freed themselves. But again, they're a created race that are now sitting here going, well, we just live and for war effectively, because we were slaves and we're not slaves, and now what do? We've got to mark our own territory, and they're kind of fueled by this clan war where some of them are going, oh, we shouldn't have used all that magic and done all those things and broken that giant artifact that gave us all that power. And others going, yeah, but we're here now, so let's just roll with it. So it's just a whole different kind of slant on the traditional dwarven archetype. Equally, the orcs were apparently one of the creation of the Spire as kind of, we need to try and create a better warrior race to help protect ourselves. That they kind of, after being used for a meat shield, escaped and created their own race. And that's kind of your orc thing. And they ride dinosaurs.
Yeah, as you do.
Yes. All of the yes. So there's the slant on all those really traditional things. And I really like that they've got a different aesthetic. They're just not the same thing rolled out. And I really like that they've got that level of history. When we get into actual game, there's a few things I really dig. One is it's an army style game. It's a rank and flank army scale. The units work together. It's that real traditional tabletop fantasy Warhammer Kings of War Warmaster style thing.
Yep.
Written, or the lead writer was Alessio Cavatore. So you've got some cred there because that dude's done some stuff. I'm looking at Warhammer. I'm looking at Mordheim. I'm looking at Kings of War. I'm looking at, he's got some cred in that regard, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff I don't play or care for.
He's been around, that's what you're saying.
Yeah. Dude's got chops. So the rules are going to be slick. And they look, from all intents and purposes, they look pretty slick and simple. It's the other thing I really like probably more than anything else I've seen in this game. They've got a few little things like, generally rolling low is better than rolling high. Cool. Doesn't really matter. The odds are the same. You can flip
the odds are the same, but it's kind of interesting to be trying to roll low when every other game rolls high.
Yeah.
Like this, even that just sort of sets it aside from everything else to me.
Yeah, that feels to me more like just a thing to have for the sake of having a point of difference. The bit I really like is the no deployment.
Yes.
So in the game, traditionally you would rock up with your army that you've made and you would spend a large portion of the game going, right, well, here's how I position my models before the game's even started.
The whole turn zero thing.
Yeah. And there's none of that shit. So your entire army is in reserve, effectively, and then depending on the type of unit, they roll onto the board over the course of the game. So the light units generally come on first, or it's easy to get them to come on early, and then the bigger, nastier, heavier stuff comes on a little bit later in the game. So they might not be able to come on until turn 3 or turn 4. So there's that. And then how they roll on is the next coolest thing I've seen. So effectively, instead of coming on from your table edge or a defined deployment zone, your reserve space, or whatever the hell they call it, I can't remember, it doesn't matter, is the back of your most forward unit.
Yep.
That is not engaged. So the more aggressive you position models, the more space you've got to bring models on. You effectively take and hold ground as part of that movement and playing in the game, which I really kind of dig. It creates a little bit more interest and dynamic to that reserve, but also the movement phase. It's not just about, I just want to hold back because I have more guns than you. You have to play aggressive because you need to bring models on and you need them to do stuff.
Yeah, so those big, heavy guys that might not come on for a couple of turns, they want to be in people's faces pretty much straight away to get the most out of them. So yeah, sitting back and just firing arrows and stuff is not gonna accomplish anything towards that goal.
Yeah, and I think it really it really creates some high risk, high reward situations. where, if you can get someone really far forward and keep them safe, you've just opened up this world of hurt where you can bring in your reserves later on. Super cool.
The other thing that got me too was the whole, and we'll go into a bit of detail about the turn phase, but so this will come in later on, but the command cards.
Yeah.
Having each of your units has a card, and that card effectively creates a stack which you draw from to see which of your units is going to go. It gives there's a bit of a game in that too, in trying to outfox your opponent and trying to work out what they're doing. But I've always been a big fan of that whole randomness. I mean, you see it to a degree in, say, X-Wing, where you might overshoot your opponent because you've thought they're going to do something and they've banked right and you've gone left or whatever. Or, even the Batman miniatures game where you're drawing tokens out of a bag to see who gets the next go. Like that whole random aspect. Here it's not so random, say, as Batman, but there's definitely a degree of thinking and working out, what's on the table on your opponent's side, what order you think they're going to go in, and trying to maximize your reactions to those.
Yeah, there's a real game within a game with that whole kind of piece, which I really dig. It's that whole trying to predict your opponent's moves, and it gives a feel of a really kind of general ship role. Like you are the general of the army. You're sitting there at the back of the thing with your tent and your advisors, and you're like, right, well, what are we going to do? Because it's not a real-time reaction. It's a turn-by-turn thing where I'm like, right, well, I need to do this and then this and then this and this because they're definitely going to do that and then that and then that. There was a comment somewhere along the lines where they're like, oh, they used inspiration from real-world kind of medieval battles and stuff to kind of do it. But that's probably the piece that captures that the most for me, is this whole concept of I have to issue my orders trying to work out what my opponent's going to do, and it gives you that real sense of, if you do that well, you have outfoxed.
Yes.
You have outplayed.
So there's a degree of satisfaction in a victory that would come from not just rolling the dice better than your opponent, not just positioning, but also outplaying.
Yeah, it really does feel like they've thought long and hard about how best to do that and how best to create some of those situations that make it feel, in a completely fantasy setting, a more accurate, for want of a better term, battle situation.
Yep, agreed. Was there anything else you wanted to add before we sort of go into a step-by-step for the turn, just to give people an idea?
No, I think they're probably the key differences for me. I haven't had a good look into the scenarios, the victory points, all the different, objectives and stuff like that, which I suppose would be the other thing that probably will matter as how the game plays out. I haven't really paid that much attention, to be honest. So, baby steps.
I mean, we are coming in raw. We're as noob as they come for this game.
Rawer than usual, to give you a benchmark.
Which is just nasty in every way, shape, and form.
Already removed an outer layer of skin.
There's no time for lubricant. Anyway, turn structure. So each turn, and I think generally these games can go for, say, up to 10 turns, but usually less than that by the time the game is worked out. There's 5 different steps in the turn. So first and foremost is your reinforcements. So all the units start off the field. Like we said, you're rolling for each. On the first turn, you're just rolling for your light infantry. Then as the turns progress, you're rolling for medium and then for heavy as well. And the number that you need to roll changes. It's easier to get your light infantry on than it is to get your medium. That sort of thing.
Yeah, and your medium guys, they might come in on turn 3 if you roll a 5. They'll come in on turn 4 if you roll a 4. It gets progressively easier kind of as you go. It's that kind of deal.
And as we said, once the game has progressed and you're a couple of turns in, those reinforcements are just sort of starting behind your other dudes. Doesn't matter where they are in the field, that's where they're coming on. So they're not coming on the baseline. The other thing is that, you're not all your stuff, only what you roll for in turn 1 is on the field. So there's none of this losing half your army before you've even had a go sort of thing, which can be an issue with other games. Second phase is called the command phase. Now, as we said, you get a card for each of your units. And what you'll do in the command phase is for all of your units that are on the field, you chuck those cards into a little pile in the order that you want them to activate. So again, you're going to have to be thinking about who your opponent's probably going to be activating first, whether you want to be, sort of hitting them in the flank after they've moved, that sort of thing. You've got to predict. That's where the mind games start sort of happening.
Yeah. And you really start, I think, in a couple of turns in, when you've got models in, they're already fighting, they're doing stuff, right? You've suddenly got this situation where I need to activate this model early, otherwise it's going to die before it does anything because it's already taken a bunch of wounds. And then on the other side of that, you're going, right, well, I know they're going to activate that early, so it does something before it dies, which means I don't have to worry about it. It's going to go first, and then I can go do some other stuff and come back to it later, kind of deal. So you can actually, again, start playing that mind game there, and trying to outfox the fox.
And like having this sort of pile of cards too, it's kind of like an extra aspect to the game. But it's not like your Malifaux where your cards are, with the dice, or it's just the turn structure that you want to take.
I do kind of like the tension that would create over the course of the game, though, because you've got this moment of like, I'm going to activate before you reveal the card. It's going to be like, oh, I didn't think you were going to do that.
Yes.
Or, it's that kind of thing. So I think it gives you those little moments of tension throughout, which, and I think, often creating tension is the sign of a good game.
Yeah, absolutely. So third phase is called Supremacy. And this one, you're pretty much rolling a dice to see who goes first. Now, there is a little extra bit in that if you have less cards than your opponent in your command stack, then you can either add or subtract 1 to your roll.
Yeah.
So it's up to you. It means that you've got a little bit more control. Whoever wins that roll is going first. So if you really want to win, you can increase your roll, get a better number than your opponent. If you want to go second, you want to see what they do, you want their troops to move into your range and line of fire, you've got those sort of options. So it's a little bit of a bonus for not having your armies shit together, basically.
It is a better analogy than I would have come up with. I love it. But I also really like the fact that they have an entire phase for what is effectively a roll-off.
Yes. Number 3, roll a dice. Done. The fourth phase, this is the action phase. Now, this is where the majority of stuff is going to happen. So whoever's won that Supremacy roll will flip over the top card in their command stack, and that is the unit that they are going to use first. And then it goes back and forth. It's not one army moving everything all at once and firing and destroying half of your army before you've had a turn, and you just grin and bear it, and as we said, there's no time for lubricant. But it's back and forth. These are the games which I dig more than anything because it keeps both players involved.
Absolutely. And I feel like it also it then makes it feel like that your two generals have issued their orders and they're units are carrying them out simultaneously, or as close to simultaneously as you can get. But it also means that you can potentially react to something that's happened as well. So a unit's activated that you didn't expect. You've you've only got the unit up next that was at the top of your deck, but it might change what you do with them.
Yeah, exactly.
So it gives you this real kind of backwards and forwards. All right, the battle layout, the battle situation has changed, and I need to adapt my strategy based on that as well, because they've done something I didn't expect, or I have to use a unit that is not in the best position for the task at hand, and all that kind of jazz as well. But yeah, alternating activations is the best way to play games, is the moral of the story.
Absolutely. Look, I couldn't agree with that more. Any game with alternating activations just seems to flow better and seems to be more of a two-player game than a one-person game and then the other person's game and then first person's game.
I have legitimately played games, and games I thoroughly enjoy, but games where I said, all right, you do your stuff, I'm going to go to the loo, grab a drink, come back, maybe talk to a couple of friends, and then I'll take my turn and you can go to the loo and do your thing as well. Do you want me to get your beer on the way? And you come back 30 minutes later and they've moved all their stuff and whatnot, and that's all cool, but I wasn't needed for the game. This isn't an option here. You do something, I do something.
Yeah, back and forth. So each unit that you activate can take 2 actions. Now, there's a couple of non-combat related actions. There's a couple of combat related actions. So your typical ones, there's like charge and attack and fire and range weapons, that sort of stuff. There's move. Which is called March, I believe, in this game. March is the only one that you can use twice. So it realistically means that most times you're probably not getting 2 attacks off in your 2 actions. You might be using like an aim to get yourself a bit better dice rolls when you eventually let loose a volley of arrows on somebody. But you're basically rolling a set number of dice, and then your opponent is going to be defending against those dice. So it's not letting anyone's single turn sort of run away with the game.
Completely. I really dig this because there isn't that situation where I've got 2 actions, I'm going to attack twice and just mutilate this unit, and it's gone and it's happy days. So that it doesn't create that negative play experience where I don't have anything to do on my next turn because you've removed all of my toys. And it means that, there's some choices there. But what they've done to replace that is give you an action that basically increases your effectiveness. So, for the shooting one, you can take an aim and it basically increases or makes your stat better by 1. So, aiming and then firing turns out better than just firing. Makes sense. So I really dig that, not just murdering stuff twice. I'm going to hit. I'm going to shoot. It means you've actually got to think about it. It reduces the amount of dice that you're throwing, and it keeps units in the game for longer, which keeps the game interesting for longer.
Yeah, exactly. Like the amount of games that that we've played where you get 2 actions and both of your actions, and you might get a free action or whatever, depending on the game. So you might have 3 actions where all 3 of them are murder the same person and completely wipe them off the field. There's none of that in this game that we've seen. All of this is our opinions after a brief amount of research. So do not take this as gospel. This is pretty much the impressions we've got.
Yeah. Also, let's just be really, really clear that research, I will fully admit, is a skill, not a skill that I necessarily have. It is a discipline. And what we did when we say we research stuff is we looked at the website, maybe read the quick start rules and watched some YouTube videos.
I mean, that's pretty good. That's more than we usually do for most of the games.
It is so much more than I normally do for anything.
What did we do for Dungeon Bowl? We just set up the board and we're like, right, okay, how do we play?
How hard can it be?
No.
Um,
So, action phase, that goes back and forth until everybody's command stack has been done. Lastly is the victory phase, where you count up any victory points that you've gotten that turn. And depending on the scenario that you're playing, that will determine how you get victory points. And at the end of that phase, if there's a winner, somebody that's reached the allotted victory point condition, they win. If there is no winner, then you start a new phase. Go right back to the start of the turn.
Rinse and repeat. So yeah, you start bringing on you get the extra units. You make your command stack. You roll to see who goes first, and you go through all that jazz again.
Yeah.
Um,
So 5 phases. First one's really a couple of rolls. Second one's putting some cards in a stack. Third one's a roll. Fourth one, that's where shit happens.
Yeah.
The fifth one is counting.
Yeah. One of those phases is really the play. I mean, I would say 2 of those phases are playing the game, and that's the making the stack and then the doing the stuff. You need the other stuff so you can do it, but really it's make a stack, do things in that order.
Yeah. So, like that's the base of the game. We will go into more details in future episodes. We want to do a couple of these. We obviously are excited about this, excited about the competition that we're doing. So if you haven't joined that, please jump on Facebook. There are 2 posts now. So first one, all you need to do, like and tag a friend. Pretty much it. Like us. Don't like the friend. Tag the friend.
We assume you like them?
Tag a person. Doesn't have to be a friend.
No.
But there is a second one which has gone up yesterday, which basically, if you want to free another entry into the draw, all you need to do, find that post and tell us which faction you're most excited about and why. Simple stuff.
Did I say anything about Orcs on Dinosaurs? Because Orcs on Dinosaurs.
Yeah. But we have plans.
Yeah.
We will be sitting down shortly. There will be another episode coming soon. Hopefully this episode will be out before we sit down. But that's all on you.
Let's aim for that, yeah.
Would you like to know more? Yeah, look, base impressions. It's a pretty game. It looks reasonably uncomplicated. I mean, there's rules in there, and I've seen things happen. When your unit does this, it does this.
Yeah, so there's extra stuff too with draw events. So some units have draw events. So when you draw them, an extra thing happens. So there's that. Characters have a little extra subset of rules where they can duel and whatnot, which is kind of fun. Nothing that overly panics me. And then it's the standard use of there are units get rules. Aim gives you a +1, or you might have something that reduces someone's defense, and those kind of standard special rules that stuff has. But I think all in all, that it looks pretty streamlined, even to the point where they've done things like you can move through your own models.
Yes, I saw that.
Don't land on them. You can't finish on them. That's bad, but you can move through them without a problem. So it just cleans up. You don't have to mess around trying to measure around shit and work that out. Just move the models, play the game. The rules don't get in the way, and that's the best bit.
Yeah. Look, it's a fantasy game. It's rank and file. All the models look impressive, but they're all on circular bases, which then slot into big square bases for this game. There's also a skirmish type version of Conquest.
They do have First Blood, which is the skirmishy version. So if you're looking for an even easier way to get into, if you just like a couple of the models. The other thing, and I saw this at Throw the Dice the other day, is the gaming mats that they've got. Specifically, I saw the First Blood one, but they've done neoprene mouse mat
Mhm.
material kind of game. They are really pretty.
Are they?
Like, really pretty. Like, I
Oh.
think it's the first Blood one I saw, which is kind of like a 3x3 or a 4x4, but kind of cobblestone.
Mhm.
Yeah, nice. Like, I saw that. I didn't know what it was. I went, where is this from? Because I need to know that. And he's like, oh, it's the one from Conquest. I'm like, oh, that's, oh, okay. Yeah.
I need to look at this.
Yeah. It's pretty. Yeah. Pretty models, pretty game. Rank and flank, which is always my jam anyway. There are lots of good things I'm pretty excited about to dig into this a little bit more and just see where it fits into the ecosystem.
Yeah. Likewise. So shall we wrap it up there?
Let's do it.
All right. By all means, jump on Facebook and give us a follow if you haven't already. Jump in those competitions, or the one competition, but jump on those 2 entry possibilities. We're on Spotify, we're on Podbean, we're on Twitch, we're raking it on Discord at the moment, which has been a lot of fun. Yeah. And also we have Patreon. So if you want to help us do these sort of competitions, this one, like I said, is kindly donated by Throw the Dice, but all of our other competitions are pretty much supported by our Patreons. All of that Patreon money goes straight into the prizes and things like that. We have a brand new Patreon this week. Glenn, thank you very much for jumping on board. It's much, much, much appreciated. But that's it.
What? We have another one?
We have another one. I know.
Oh.
This week, I told you. Were you listening to me at all?
No.
No, I guess not.
This again is nothing unusual.
Professionalism at its best. Laters.
All right, catch ya.
Thoughtless casual gaming. Thoughtless casual gaming. Thoughtless casual gaming. Thoughtless casual.